He's going to I broke mine.
Gavel.
Good morning. Yeah, I don't even have a gavel.
You don't have a gavel here.
No. All right, everybody. Good morning. I'll officially call to order the regular meeting of Coachella Valley Water District Board of Directors. It's July 26, 2022, here in Coachella. And let's do the opening remarks for COVID. I'd like to make clear for the record that this meeting is being conducted as permitted under AB 361 and Board Resolution 2022-10. Today's meeting is presented in a hybrid format, in person at CVWD's Coachella office and via Zoom. AB 361 suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act, allowing district board members to participate in person or by video conference. Members of the public may participate in person or via Zoom. Zoom details are listed on the meeting agenda. The meeting is streamed live on the district's website and YouTube channel. If any member of the public wishes to make public comment, you'll have the opportunity to do so as we work through at the beginning of the meeting and as we work through the agenda. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature to draw attention to the board clerk, and we will call on you. Currently don't have any remote participants, but if we do, we'll make sure that we call on them, and we won't be doing roll call votes unless we have any remote board member. So we'll see if that happens. He might join for part of the meeting.
Yeah, for the drought.
We will see. Good. So why don't you stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Good morning, President Powell.
Here.
We'll note Vice President Estrada is absent, and if he joins us, we'll note for the record Director Bianco.
Here.
Director Aguilar.
Here.
And Director Nelson.
Okay. Here.
Thank you.
Teeny echo. Yeah, thank you. So, are we aware of any need for additions, deletions, or adjustments for today's agenda?
No, sir, and I don't see anybody jumping to their feet, rushing to the podium. I think we're good.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public wishing to make public comment at this time?
Mr. President, I do not see any raised hand from participants on Zoom, so I would say no at this time.
All right. Well, let me know if there is. Yes. We'll be probably a little flexible now. Let's see. On the consent calendar, we have items 5A through K.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull I through K, please.
I, J, and K?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar?
I'll move the balance of the calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passed 4-0. All right, so 6 is the
I guess this will probably be Scott. So I, J, and K all kind of revolve around the same question. As years ago, in fact, John was just saying, I wish I'd been around 20 years, got a lot of experience, but it used to be that Exhibit A we'd get Exhibit A on these items. And so I get the reasons why we may not. But on each and every one of these items, it lists the kind of the total amount for the irrigation water availability charges or the sewer service charges or the tax rolls, but it doesn't list how much is going over to the county in terms of non-paid. And so I thought the reports were rather vague and did not provide enough information. So I'd like to get a kind of update where we're at on that. It's a good; those amounts are good indicators of how the economy's doing and what's going on in the district, and so I felt like it was incomplete.
Good morning. My name is Albert Galindo. I am the accountant for the Customer Billing Department. You had questions regarding I through K. Some of it does involve the delinquent tax roll to the property taxes that we send to our customers that we provide to the county tax roll on a yearly basis. We had delinquency-wise, we had approximately classes 1 through 4. We approximately had around 250,000 delinquent customer amount of money going to our tax roll, which involves approximately around 1,700 customers. If we compare the delinquency taxes previously for the prior tax year, we actually had a little bit more of 258,000. So in money terms wise, classes 1 through 4, which is our residential customers, we actually are sending less money to our tax rolls, and this is probably due to the fact that we had such a huge outreach from our customer service, from our customer billing department, contacting customers, letting them know what our processes was on rolling over money to our tax roll. Also due to the fact that we had money coming in from the state. We had almost $200,000 coming in from the state to help some of these customers bring down their tax roll, which included almost 900 customers. So residential customers-wise, we are actually lower from their previous fiscal year. And again, it's all due to the fact of our outreach, of our customer service, customer billing, sending inserts to our customers, informing them any delinquencies past our April 1st timeline would be eligible for tax roll. And this is why some of the money that is rolling over to our property taxes is actually less than last year. Again, I'm talking about classes 1 through 4, which is our residential customers.
Great.
Excuse me real quick. For the tax service-wise, for the sewer service, as you know, we recently increased our customers rolling over to our tax rate. So these are our fixed charges. These are charges coming from our residential customers rolling over to the property taxes. Again, from last year, I believe we did around $29 million. This year, we're running around $32 million. And this mostly these are customers coming in from who are getting billed monthly. And this is the time of year that we send these fixed charges to our county tax rolls so that they could appear on their property taxes instead of getting billed on a monthly basis. For our availability charges, our availability for customers are mostly on some of these areas the houses are not actually there. We do have sewer lines, we do have water lines there in front of the properties, so they have to meet a certain criteria in order for us to get charged these availability charges. Once these houses are built, these availability charges do come off the tax roll, and they do start becoming a monthly service charge for these customers. So these numbers typically do decrease, and that's just because, as we start developing these different communities, these customers stop coming off the tax roll and will start rolling over to their monthly service bill. Is there any other questions I can help you?
Yeah, so just in the last one, I think you covered very well the domestic charges as well as the sewer charges. But the irrigation water availability charges, how is that? What's the data on that one?
For canal customers who are...
Yeah, that would be item K.
Sorry about that. Let me see what I got there. So, irrigation. So the availability charges for for canal availability. We are approximately rolling over 1.6 million, and these are just rough numbers. We actually, on availability charges, believe we had. Give me 1 second.
Because I was thinking that 1.6 million was the total for water availability. So I was just wondering how much.
We're actually transferring approximately 600, just a little, 610,000.
Can you please come up to the mic?
We're transferring approximately $610,000. So because we do give our customers up to July 15th to make those payments, all the water use payments that's satisfying for this fiscal year. So it does significantly reduce towards the end of the year.
You said 610,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so roughly a third. Yeah. All right.
Last year it was, I think, close to 600, 595, I believe.
Okay. All right. Thanks for all great information. I appreciate it, and I wish next year, if when you do this, if you could include some of that information in just the consent calendar and the report, it'd be helpful.
Yes, sir.
So thanks. I'd move approval of I, J, and K.
Sir, if I may, I think one of the reasons why it's not in there is because this gets submitted like a week to 10 days before, and the information is changing on a daily basis. So, it's probably better for us to just make a note that we'll provide a verbal briefing at the
That's fine.
time, rather than try and publish something that's going to be out of date as soon as we publish it.
That's fine, Jim, as long as we get the information and
Yeah.
kind of get a rough order of magnitude. I'm
Not
fine
trying to
with
keep
that.
anything secret.
Yeah. No,
And I think the ask was for looking back a year or 1 year or 2 years or.
It would be helpful, but they were making some comparisons at 600 versus 610 or
Yeah, I mean,
250 versus 200. I mean,
It sounded pretty level.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. So there's a motion. Was there a second?
Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second for all three items. You okay with that, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passed 4-0.
14. No, we're not going to make it.
All right, 7A. I don't get necessarily who's presenting on here. Armando. So yeah, come on up, whoever you are, and then I'll call you.
Good morning, President Powell, members of the board, audience, and fellow staff.
Yeah, the new format doesn't give us.
Armando Rodriguez with the CWD's Engineering Department, just for the record.
Thank you.
So the purpose of the board action item is to seek approval to authorize the general manager to execute a construction contract in the amount of $129,930 with Sankong Technologies for the sewer pipeline rehabilitation for Palm Desert, from Palm Desert and Thousand Palms. This is an annual sewer rehab project that we do. We typically do manholes, and we also do pipelines. In addition to this construction, we're also seeking additional construction soft cost for Krager Stewart for construction support of $28,400. Also, soil inspection with services with Layton Consulting for $5,979. And then also project management inspection and contingency of 10% for $63,421. Total ask as of today is $663,911. Let me just take a moment to clarify. There was a couple items within the board item. There were a couple items within the board action that need some clarification. There were 4 bids, but I think in our board action item we specified 3. Greatly appreciate Aguilar's input in regards. Sorry about that. We'll make sure we catch that next time. We're more careful. And then also the engineer's estimate did not change during bidding. It was consistently 800 to 1 million. So that's another item that we'll be careful next time as we write these up. Thank you again. So with that, I would like to see if you guys, if the board would like to have a presentation or have any specific questions in regards to this annual sewer rehab on pipelines focused on Palm Desert, within Highway 74, within the Judson Shopping Center, and also Tri Palms.
When you rehab, what does that entail exactly?
Okay, so our rehabilitation is basically what we're doing is trying to improve the existing pipelines as they are now. Either they have cracks or they have root intrusion or some have other deformity or deterioration. Actually, the pipe might deteriorate. So we're trying to, there's two ways to do that. Either we can trench it, open trench it, remove a pipe that is of concern so we can avoid a sanitary sewer overflow, and install new pipe, and that is usually very costly and also very disruptive to the motoring public. And or we can do what we call a cured in-place pipe, where we put a liner through the pipe to the existing pipeline. We cure it with hot steam, and then it becomes a pipe within a pipe, and then it gives us longevity for another 30, 40 years. On average, these pipes that we have here pictured have an average age about 50 years. So we expect to have the same type of longevity with the cured in place pipe, so a pipe within the pipe. Doesn't need any trenching. This is all done within the manhole to manhole. And a lot of this work can be done at night so that we can not disrupt the motoring public. And is very inexpensive. Open trenching is $350. We expect this to be less than $100, though this one came out to be $120 a foot, just because we're dealing with some sensitive areas here within Tri-Palms. There's a lot of residential streets, so there's a lot of hand handling of the cured in place pipe.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so there's probably going to be a lot more of this sort of thing coming up as the system ages, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
So that's a pretty efficient way to
Address concerns.
do that. Yeah. I mean, is this supposed to go another 50 years?
We
30?
The CIPP, depending who you talk to, has somewhere between 25 and 30 years lifespan. So yes, beyond.
I mean, 50 to me doesn't seem like a very long time. I mean, it seems like it should be last longer than that. I mean,
I haven't been here long enough in Earth to do that, but I'm sure we will have longevity. We're very lucky. It's our collection system is relatively young, and so we're lucky to have isolated spots of concern that we mitigate every year.
Yeah, good. Okay. Thank you, Armando. Is there a motion to approve 7A?
I'll move.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? Is that sufficient for the presentation? Yeah, I think it is. Good. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passed 4-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Armando. All right, so then B is Dan. Hi, Dan. Curtis. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm here to request the board's approval to solicit bids for our Avenue 66 Water Transmission Main Phase 2 project, which is shown in red there. The portion of the pipeline Phase 1B in Lincoln Street, the board approved solicitation of bids back in January. We're currently wrapping up the design of Phase 2 right now. We expect the easement acquisitions to hopefully be completed by the end of the year. We expect our SRF funding agreement to be here by the end of the year as well. So the idea would be to go out to bid with Phase 2 as well as Phase 1B in Lincoln Street at one time. So that's what the request is for today. And we did receive a $7 million appropriation for this project. And in April, we received a $23.4 million grant as well, which has no contingency. So if our costs come in higher, the state has committed to pay those additional costs.
23.4? Yeah, that's
Yes.
great. Yeah.
So with that, request the board's approval
Yeah.
to solicit bids when we're ready.
For sure. Yeah, that's great. All right, a motion to approve 7B. Motion by Director Aguilar,
second.
second by Bianco. Yeah, that's great. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passed 4-0.
It's good work.
Thank you.
I'm sure Castelo would have voted yes on that
So 5-0?
if you were here.
No doubt.
That's his deal. Good. 7C, Carrie, good morning.
Good morning, President Powell, members of the board. So for this particular item right here, this is the annual requirement for us to just establish the limit for our appropriations limit. So I don't have a separate presentation on it, so it's more I'm just going to ask if you have any questions to get this item approved. So our tax limit is at $60 million, and our tax subject to that limit is 47. So we do have an excess under limit of $12.5 million.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move approval of the appropriation limit.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passed 4-0. And then you're
next
still
one.
there, so you
Yes.
go ahead with D.
The next three still mine. So the next item is just to seek board approval to allow us to apply for the Water Energy and Efficiency Grant Program for our landscape rebate project. So this is one of those rush applications. We had an opportunity. It is actually due this Thursday. But we do need a resolution to be submitted along with the application. This one will allow us to receive about $1.5 million in federal grant, and we are required to do a 50% match. And that 50% match is going to be funded through the applicants for this rebate program. They're required to pay for it. So, do you have any other questions on this one as well?
Good. Is there a motion to approve this? D.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passed 4-0. Then we have the signatory. Go ahead
Yeah,
again.
that's correct. So this item is just to update the authorized personnel to perform banking transactions for us and investment transactions as well. We are recommending to add Director of Human Resources Scott Hunter, and also removing a retired Director of Finance, Jeffrey Keel. So all the attached documents are there for our banking from U.S. Bank, Union Bank, and also our Chandler Investments.
And I assume they're all listed in here, right? I mean, okay, yeah,
Yes.
they're there.
Yeah. And all the resolutions are attached as well for all 4 sections.
Do we need that many check signers? Huh? 1, 2, 3,
So we have about 6 total.
6, yeah.
Yeah, so we have 3 backup each, especially on the Fridays or Mondays. So we have RDOs, then we have 3 authorized people to be backing up.
Yeah, all right, fair enough.
I just had a quick question, Carrie.
Yes.
So how about our other investment funds that we have with our investment firms? Are those covered?
Yes, so Chandler is actually, our trustee is U.S. Bank. So once we do with the U.S. Bank, any transactions from Chandler is handled by U.S.
Okay.
Bank. So it's part of this resolution as well.
Okay, cool, thank you. I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Yeah, thank you. We have a motion and a second. I just had a question. So if and when we hire a director of finance, are we going to add that person to this list also?
Okay.
That's correct, yes.
You would remove the HR director and add the finance.
Well, that's what I was going to wonder.
Correct.
So you might remove the HR director and put the finance director on.
Correct.
That's correct.
Makes sense.
I guess it does. Yeah. I mean, I might have just waited, but that's okay. It works both ways. All right. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passed 4-0. Got that done. And then we have the prepayment of the unfunded liability. Go ahead.
That's correct. So for this particular one, this is, again, the annual opportunity for us to pay our CalPERS unfunded liability in advance instead of paying it in 12 months. We are still required to pay this unfunded liability. So for this year, our amount due is $16.7 million, and we can pay it in advance by July 31st for 16.1. So that is a payment savings of $556,000. However, we do other calculations to really show what the actual savings are. So it is shown on the BAI that based on our calculations, we are going to be gaining about $256,000. So the purpose of paying the UAL in advance is it just allows us to use the money, send it to CalPERS sooner, because they do have the ability to invest it in higher returns than our regular portfolio. Because our regular portfolio is restricted by California law on specific types of investment. CalPERS has a little bit more opportunity to invest it in other investment vehicles that is restricted for any local municipality or special district. So estimating we're getting gain about 256 instead of the 566,000. We do keep it conservative. CalPERS, we are predicting that they were going to be earning about 5%. We're trying to make it as conservative as possible. And then the gaining for the investment portal is only 2%. So there's a change of about 3% between the two portfolios. Back in July, we did have a preliminary, July 12th, sorry, still July. On July 12th, we did have a preliminary report from our CalPERS actuary that we do have a negative 6% loss as of fiscal year 2022. The report should be coming out hopefully in the next 2 weeks, and we should be able to see what those losses are.
Okay. Yeah, not surprising, and actually that's not as big a number as I thought it might be on the loss. Good. This 16 million, is that about, I know we do this every year. Do you recall last year, was it similar number? Or
It's about
9 million, I think I remember.
Yeah. So even if we do have the UAL at that amount, we do pay what we budget for, because the actuaries are always based a year behind. And so what we try to do is we use our current payroll budget and we calculate our own UAL and pay that in full. So again, because what we're doing is we're utilizing our funds to earn more money in investment returns earlier than what CalPERS is doing. So that allows us to, so it's about close to 16 million last year, but we did pay about 19 million as budgeted on our whole UAL.
Last year?
Yes.
And so you're confident with prepaying this that our cash flow won't be interrupted?
No, it won't. Okay. We always budget enough sufficient funds to pay the UAL and make sure that we earn earnings on it.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. I mean, you don't know for sure about the 5%, but it's worth it, I think.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
I'd move approval.
Buy low, sell high.
Yeah.
I'll second that. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passed 4-0. Okay, on to operations.
Thank you.
Olivia,
Olivia.
non-potable.
Yep. Non-potable water agreement with Suncrest Mobile Home Park. Morning, Olivia.
Good morning. This BAI is for the approval and authorization of the general manager to sign the non-potable water agreement for Suncrest Mobile Home Park. Suncrest is in the West Rack, and they would be a Type A customer. This would be for the expansion of the pipeline from Warp 10 on the low pressure side, and it would be continuing north on Portola, and we go west on Frank Sinatra, and then there would be a branch down Monterey to enter that gate through the side at Suncrest. And this is, we were approved for a Clean Water State Revolving Fund loan, along with several other properties that are listed in there. And this is water supply sustainability goal for the district to connect golf courses to non-potable water.
Good. Okay. Is there a motion to approve G?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passed 4-0. Thanks, Olivia.
Thanks, Olivia.
Okay, let's see. public hearings. So we're going to move into item 8A now. Albert.
Good morning. Good morning.
At this time, staff will provide, this is the public hearing on the domestic water service and sewer and waste service availability assessments for Riverside and Imperial counties. At this time, staff will provide a presentation on the domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments to be assessed for fiscal year 2022-23 through collection on the tax rolls. Making the presentation this morning is Albert Galindo, accountant. He's right there.
Good morning.
Thank you.
My name is Albert Galindo, accountant for the Customer Billing Department. I will present you on the availability assessment. Within all areas of the district other than the Improvement District 6, 7, 8, 18, 19, and Service Area 35, the amount of the levy is $10 per year for each acre of land, or $10 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre. Within Improvement Districts numbers 10, 13, 14, and 15, the amount of the levy is $30 per year for each acre of land, or $30 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre for domestic water service availability. Within Improvement District number 11, the amount of the levy is $23 per year for each acre of land, or $23 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre for domestic water service availability. Within all sanitation improvement districts, the amount of the levy is $30 per year for each acre of land, or $30 per year for each parcel of land less than 1 acre for sewage and wastewater service availability.
Thank you. Could I ask for a clarification?
Yes, sir.
What's the rate on 6, 7, 8, 18, and 19? Is there a typo here? That's why I'm asking.
For 6, 7, 8, and 19, the amount of levy is $10.
All right, so it says within all district areas of the districts other than 6, 7, 8. So is that a typo?
Let me double check.
You're reading that in the resolution?
No, I'm just reading it in what Albert just said on the script.
Oh, not of the script. Sorry.
I'm assuming that's a typo.
So what we're saying is within ID 6, 7, 8, 18, 19, and Service Area 35, the amount is $10 per acre. Is that what we're trying to say? Because it says the opposite. I just want to make sure we get it right. The resolution should be correct, right?
The resolution is correct.
That's $10 in those areas, right?
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay. So I just want to make sure we note that the correction to the script there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
From what I have in the resolution, it refers to an exhibit. I don't see the exhibit.
Yeah, me either.
Same as my consent calendar items, no exhibits. I don't know what the rates are.
Are we changing the rate?
No, sir. No recommended. No changes recommended.
Okay, so this is,
So I get it.
So-
I would think there'd be a map of the areas. I think there would be a Exhibit A provided to us with a list of all the areas. I'm a little disappointed in the presentation again.
Is this the one that's like?
And we don't get the script
Yes,
until
the availability, yes.
here, until right here. So I'm looking at it going, this doesn't
No, that
match
was
that.
the
You have it,
now
but we don't have
water
it.
No, I know.
availability.
He is
This
just
the
supposed to read it, but
assessments.
it's not correct.
No, I get it, but
It's the, usually on these, we don't provide the attachments on these. Yeah, I don't see.
So what we're saying is it's no change, and then in improvement districts 6, 7, 8, 18, 19, and service area 35, the amount of levy is $10 per acre for each acre of land per year, and $10 per year for each parcel less than an acre. Then improvement districts 10, 13, 14, and 15, it's $30 per year per acre, or $30 for each parcel less than an acre. So this is not in the resolution.
Well, that's for sewer. Right, it would be in Exhibit A, which is
Yeah.
referenced in the resolution.
Which is
And then within
exactly what it was last year.
Yeah.
within
Yeah,
improvement
we did
district
mention
11,
that
it's
we did send
$23
the
per
TXO's
acre.
rates to you on, it does
Parcel.
have the detailed.
So I can appreciate that we're not having any changes,
Last week.
but I would also appreciate a map of the areas under consideration, as well as Exhibit A that would list the assessments in each of those areas. And if this is not a timely thing that we have to do, I would propose that we delay it until we get that information.
Hi, my name is Yesenia Reynoso. I'm with Customer Billing. I'm the Assistant Revenue Manager, so I wanted to make some clarification. And yes, next time you can provide a map. But for most of the charges for districts 13, 14, and 15, and 11, those are usually in Frio County. And most of the availability, which would be the remaining assessments, 10, 11, 6, 7, 8, 18, 19, and 35. Those are usually Sky Valley, DHS, along Dillard Road. But definitely we will provide a map next time.
Go ahead.
The final exhibit, we do provide usually towards the end because that's still, we're still working on that. So it's a moving number just because we are identifying properties until we do go over to tax roll.
And so this is time sensitive? Does this have to get to the county by the first
In
of?
August. By August 12th.
Well, then we need to do it today.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess my concern is that if I were in one of these areas and I went, and I don't know if we provide notice to the public as a public hearing. I guess we have provided notice. If I would go to the agenda item and said, "Am I in one of these areas?" and you know, I'd go to the agenda, I'd see the staff report, I'd see the resolution, and I'd say, "Well, I guess I'm not covered because I would have no idea." And I think we need to provide a greater sense of transparency on where these are at with a complete and full report, understanding that we need to approve this by a certain date for the counties. Understand that there's no increase, but if it comes like this next year, I would propose we'd have a special meeting, which none of us want to do, to approve something like this, because I really do feel like we don't have enough information provided to the public to make a good to take action. So with that, I move approval, but with the caveats that next year it comes in a complete package.
Maybe those fees were too high.
Yeah, so we'll get to the approval part in a minute.
Oh, okay, all right.
Because we need to do the public hearing.
Okay, I got it. I said my piece.
Okay.
Yeah, we know, you're foretelling the.
If I may, just for the record, which I believe this is one of the reasons, sorry, I was hunting through my emails to determine why the attachments weren't. And what it is the attachments in total, I believe there's 3 separate ones. They total about 4,000 pages. And that is why we did not add it as the backup. So we could probably email that separately and post that.
We don't need.
But if we could at
So
least.
you're missing the point. So
If you could
the
at
point
least-
is that I don't have a map to know where the zones are, and if there's only 15 zones, it should be not 4,000 pages to list what the assessment is.
Correct.
Okay, I get the 4,000 pages, but the public ought to have an ability to see
Correct.
what
Yeah.
they're
And
being.
the amount of money we're collecting and
Absolutely, yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know what it's being used for and
Yeah.
all of that
Yeah,
good
yeah.
stuff.
The information that's in the script is pretty much what you're asking for, plus a map that shows where these areas are.
Okay.
I have a
if that could
question.
be
I have a question regarding the public hearing
in the public
process.
Go ahead.
So when you notice this, to Peter's point, when you notice this, are the owners notified individually, or is there just the publication in the newspaper, and does that contain a map, or can you explain to me in more detail the public hearing notification process?
We sent notices to the two newspapers twice. They published 2 different weeks to the two different newspapers, the Desert Sun and the Imperial Press, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, if there's a change or an adoption of a rate or charge, that would go to each particular property owner. The Water Code provides these levels that you can impose for these types of assessments. Once it's approved, the Water Code says every year you publish it in the newspaper. So it doesn't go every year to each particular customer.
Okay, thank you.
Since there's no change.
Correct.
If there's no change. Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes it a little easier to swallow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Thank you. So this is the time and place fixed for the public hearing on the proposed domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments in Riverside and Imperial counties for fiscal year 2022-23. Clerk Bermudez, have we completed proper notification of this hearing?
Yes, Mr. President. We have proof of proper notice of this hearing. I have the proofs of publication from the Desert Sun and Imperial Valley Press and the affidavit of posting.
Thank you. This public hearing is being held pursuant to a notice duly published and recently mailed as required by law to all property owners in the district who own land. Is that true?
Yes.
We did that. We mailed it to, all right. Which is subject to annual domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments for fiscal year 2022-23. These assessments are unchanged from previous years. The report containing the description of each parcel of land within the district upon which the assessments will be imposed has been filed with the clerk of the board, and that's that 4,000-page attachment. That's why we're not seeing it. Okay. So at this time, I declare the public hearing open and will request that those wishing to speak please give your name, property location, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is anyone wishing to comment at this time?
I don't, Mr. President, I do not have any request to speak on Zoom at this time.
All right, I'm just giving it a minute just in case somebody's trying to get in. Okay. All right, so there being no further comments, I declare the public hearing closed. Clerk Bermudez, have we received any written communications regarding the availability assessment?
No, Mr. President, no written communications have been received to date.
Thank you. Council Frey, will you comment on the public hearing?
This public hearing has been held as required by law. The board has given the property owner the right to be heard. All legal requirements have been satisfied. The board can now proceed in making its decision on the establishment of the domestic water service and sewage waste service availability assessments to be collected on the tax roll.
Thank you. So at this time, do I have a motion to adopt a resolution to levy domestic water service and sewage and waste service availability assessments and authorize transfer assessments to the fiscal year 2022-23 county tax rolls?
that must be my cue.
Yeah, it is.
So I will make the motion to approve as recommended by the staff with the caveat that we come back with a full report on the next year.
Yeah, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And then for the vote, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed 4-0. All right, thanks, Albert. Now, this brings us to another public hearing on the adoption of the drought penalties. Jana? This is the public hearing to adopt an ordinance imposing revised and additional restrictions on water use to comply with statewide drought regulations. At this time, staff will provide a presentation on the adoption of volumetric drought penalties in accordance with Demand Reduction Action 2.5 of CVW's water shortage contingency and pursuant to Resolution 2022-28 regarding the adoption of all Level 2 demand reduction actions. And then following the presentation, we will open the public hearing. And making the presentation is Jenna Shimon, not Director of Service. Go ahead.
Good morning. No, Jenna Shimon, Conservation Manager with the Water Management Department. So to start us off, I just want to do a quick recap of what we've done throughout the year to get us to this point. The state adopted various regulations requiring agencies to implement their various water restrictions, and then stage 2 of their water shortage contingency plans. And so today that we'll be speaking specifically about the last action, which is action 2.5. Through our proposed drought penalties, 2.5 calls for a 10% reduction to the outdoor water budget. And so in order to implement that, because there are some Prop 218 issues around how that's written, which we are taking this through a cost of service study in order to help alleviate these problems in the future. But for today's purposes, the first 90% of the outdoor water budget would not be having any penalties assessed to it, but the top 10% of the outdoor water budget would have the penalties assessed for each unit of water. And then for the other tiers 3, 4, and 5, every unit of water would be assessed a penalty. And just to give you an idea of how many customers that would affect, you can see that for January of this year, about 62% of customers would fall within the non-penalty phases. And then about 37.5% of customers would be assessed a penalty if they did not change anything about their behavior. But we do anticipate that they would have and will continue to change their behavior, especially once drought penalties are enacted. So historically, as you may recall, back in 2015, the district adopted drought penalties, and at that time, staff anticipated roughly 45% of customers would be affected by these drought penalties. However, 50% fewer people were actually affected by that, and so we anticipate very similarly the impact would be the same, so less than 20% of customers would likely have drought penalties applied to their account as we are proposing them today. And so how those penalties will look, what we did was a graduated penalty based on the tier, and this is just to, we feel very strongly that the customers that are using the most water are the ones that should be bearing the heaviest weight of these penalties. And so as mentioned, Tier 1 and the first part, the first 90% of Tier 2 would have no penalty assessed. And then as you look at the top 10% of your Tier 2 usage, the penalty would be 25% of the rate. And so that would mean 29 cents extra per unit of water for all of the units used in the top 10%, which would be $1.46 per unit of water. And then as you move into Tier 3, the penalty is 50% of the rate. So that's an additional $1.80 per unit of water. So every unit of water in Tier 3 would be $5.39 per unit. Tier 4 is 75% of the unit, or the rate. So every unit of water used in Tier 4 is an additional $3.16 for a total of $7.37 per unit of water used in Tier 4. And then for Tier 5, again, putting the biggest bearing on the highest water users, 100% of the rate. So it would be an additional $6.44 per unit for a total of $12.88 per unit of water used within Tier 5. And just to give you an idea, we looked at for the June billing, who had the largest Tier 2 water budget, and that budget was 26,692 units of water for their Tier 2 budget. So if they used all of their Tier 2, the penalty would have been $774 for that account, for that top 10% of their Tier 2, just to give you an idea of what the biggest impact could potentially have been to the biggest water user staying within budget.
What type of a user is that?
That'd be an irrigation account.
Okay.
So it's a large landscape.
For like an HOA or something?
Yeah.
So could you repeat that one more time, the maximum
So we looked at-
effect on the top 10% of the Tier 2?
Yeah, so we looked at the customer with the largest water budget for the month of June, and that was roughly 26, almost 27,000 units for their budget. If they used the entire Tier 2 budget, didn't exceed it, they would have paid $774 additional for the penalty. That 29 cent per the top 10 of it.
That's a really big outdoor budget.
Yeah, it's huge. So you can see at the 29 cent per unit charge, if our efficient customers can see little to no impact on their bill.
I was looking at how it would affect, because I came in thinking you're going to have to prove this top this 10% to me, why that makes sense for an efficient user to reduce. And if you had a 50 CCF budget, 10% of that is 5, and 5 at the 29-cent differential is $1.45.
Yeah, it's not very much.
Yeah, the intent is not to.
So we did this once before. Didn't we double the raise?
Correct. That's because at the time, the reduction target was 36% for the district, and then reduced to 32%. And prior to drought penalties going in place, the consumption had only gone down about 10%. And so that was why the need for the larger penalty.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, so we are following our Tier 2 plan, right?
Our Stage 2 plan.
Okay. And our Tier 2 plan says decrease outdoor budgets by 10%.
Correct.
Okay? By doing that, exactly what the plan says, we need to do a 218.
Correct.
Okay. And by doing a 218 right now, okay, although that's going to take some time, we would be following the plan that the state has approved.
Correct.
Okay. So why aren't we doing that? I mean, why are we doing something that is different than the plan? So you've been telling me that we have to stick to this plan. We should be sticking to this plan. And that would be perfectly legal and in the direction that the state has approved for us is to do that. And that's what we should be doing instead of the way we're doing a modified. You didn't allow us to modify any of these other ones. Okay, under Tier 2, you told us we had to do it exactly the same, and so that's what we should be doing. Decreasing our budgets by 10%, which is in our plan, instead of this modified version that you guys came up with.
Right. So part of that is, as you mentioned,
Because you guys want to go faster.
Yeah, the 218 takes.
And the state's not telling us that we have to go faster. They're telling us to stick to this plan. So we've already reduced water by 10%. Okay, the desert has without this. Okay, this getting out to the public, coming forward, will probably trigger some more. But we're going farther than what we need to, in my opinion.
Can I jump in on here? Hello, Director Bianco. Scott Burrett, Director of Service and Communication. So, we did discuss this, and, we would have to go through the Prop 218 process. That's going to take some time to get through that process and complete the cost of service study.
Right. You guys put this together.
Yeah.
Okay, and you knew that that's what we needed to do when you put the Tier 2 together, and you submitted it to the state, which the state approved. So we knew this ahead of time.
Actually, we didn't.
What do you mean you didn't?
Well, we didn't know that we were going to have to go through a Prop 218 process at that time.
What changed since we did that?
I think there was no new law, but I think, it wasn't envisioned that we would have to, that the state would tell us we have to mandate, at the time we thought we could pick and choose which of those, kind of like a menu, which options within each level, shortage level, we would adopt.
We knew that too, but when you put in 2.5 decrease outdoor budgets by 10%, we didn't know that we were going to have to do a 218. I mean,
we didn't know at the time, correct? Because a number of water agencies did that. So now we find ourselves in the same situation where we're trying to implement this. So, our thought was that, in adopting or proposing the adoption of the drought penalties was that we do something in lieu of reducing the outdoor water budgets, and we do it until we get through that cost of service study, because there is a sense of urgency. This past month we may have saved 10.5% compared to 2020, but that's not going to last. I mean, I think we could do that over the summer, but we do have a mandate to reduce by 15%, and we're not there yet.
But we just started. Didn't we just do this? I mean, we just started here. I mean, it takes time for people to change their habits. I mean, you need to allow.
So we did this, what was it, 5 years ago?
2015.
Yeah.
7 years ago.
Right. And that was a 36% mandate.
No, I understand that. But we're, I support it because it works. I mean, we did it once. It worked. It accomplished what we wanted it to accomplish. and it avoided a costly and time-consuming rate-making process. We don't need to make rates. I mean, that's one thing we have is we can legally implement this.
John, they're going to come and ask you to do this soon too. They're going to do both.
Who's they?
The district. Staff is going to ask for us to do a 218 here coming up shortly to reduce to 10% already. So it's going to happen.
Who says?
Scott told me that. Didn't you tell me that?
So yeah, I mean,
that you're going to do this also. This is just
why would you do that? You don't need to.
Yeah, that isn't in addition. I mean, one of the things that we're so we are looking, you know, as I mentioned, we are looking as part of the cost of service study that we're doing, including provisions so that we could reduce the outdoor water budgets, and we're modeling it after what some other agencies are doing. But it also includes drought surcharges, which some agencies are assessing, not drought penalties, but surcharges to make up for that reduced revenue. So at that time, the board could decide which one of these options you'd like to pursue, I think. But that is part of the cost of service, but there's no guarantee that that's actually going to be adopted by the board down the road.
But you're going to ask for it. That's what I'm trying to say, is that you're going to ask.
But we wouldn't, yeah, we wouldn't have both.
Part of the implementing the stage 2 of our drought contingency plan.
And we wouldn't have both.
That's a cost of service study.
That's a completely different thing. Okay.
And we wouldn't have both a drought penalty and then drought surcharges and a reduction in the outdoor water budgets.
And if I may, it is confusing, and the law is not clear as to using the vernacular of tiers, budgets, and surcharges. And so most water shortage contingency plans that were approved do track the one that was approved here, and they do authorize a penalty of this nature in order to reduce consumption during a mandated level 2. And the state board has said already you must have some of all your measures in stage 2 in effect. And so we have the authority, and as we've done in the past, to have this penalty used instead of changing everyone's tiers or adopting completely new water budgets. That's what the cost of service study will address on a larger scale other than this particular drought. That's the difference. This is a penalty to address this drought under our level 2 under the state board requirements. What I think staff is talking about is the cost of service study is going to make it clear for the board what new tiers may be, what new surcharges may be, but that's on a larger level.
Correct. And for the next drought.
And for the next drought.
I have another question, kind of sort of off topic, but you mentioned in the staff report the revenue from this, the penalties can be used for the rebate program. And I'm curious about, because it looks as though the money's going to be probably expended that's been allocated. What have we reached out, and do we have any other kind of feedback from other partner cities about participating in the program? And if so, can you address that?
Sure. So I actually checked this morning. So as of Friday, we've given out $404,000, almost $405,000 in just turf rebates to both residential and large landscape. But reserved, we already have $1.6 million. You'll recall our budget for turf rebates was $2.5 million. So total, we have just over $2 million we've agreed to either have paid out or will pay out to customers we've approved for our program. Mm-hmm. So we're already almost at capacity, and we're barely at July 25th. And we know we have lots of large landscape customers that are still needing to be reviewed, so that's more landscape square footage that would be added. And we did meet with the city of Palm Desert last week, and so we're in talks with their staff. We do hope that that'll be a domino effect, that if another city adopts, we'll get additional cities here in the valley. And as mentioned, though, we only have about less than $500,000 left.
So this program, if we adopt this, would add significant funds.
That will definitely be needed once the city of Palm Desert, if their council approves.
Because when you do the 218, you lose revenue. The district loses revenue, and this is another way so you don't lose revenue. Right? If we reduced the budgets by 10%, the district will have less revenue coming in.
I think that's a question for Carrie, but if you reduce them by 10%, it pushes people into tier 3 sooner. So I would imagine that would increase revenue because those units of water now would be charged more per unit.
Yeah, so I think what Director Bianco is saying is if we do a more permanent change to the methodology that sets the budgets and then sets the rates, because we're now moving down the scale, we would need to generate more revenue, which would potentially mean the rates themselves have to increase as consumption decreases.
So what you're saying is adopting smaller budgets would reduce demand on water
Potentially.
use.
Potentially.
I think that's the,
Yes.
Potentially.
yeah. And then you, because really the rate is based on the cost of service, divided by the amount of units you sell, right?
Correct.
I do have a comment on that. So in looking at what other water agencies have done, they've reduced the outdoor water budgets, but then also imposed a surcharge to make up for that lost revenue. So,
Penalties effectively do the same
yeah.
thing.
So it's meant to be revenue neutral, but
Yeah,
I mean, there's districts that don't even have tiers at all.
Correct.
almost.
Right. I mean, so I just think we're going too fast. I think we should stick to this plan. I think we should start implementing our 218 and doing it the way we've outlined here.
So I'll say the 15% call for reduction actually came last July. And because the state only had achieved roughly 6 to 7% reduction, that's why the governor directed in March of this year the Water Board to adopt some regulations requiring agencies to go to their stage 2 at a minimum. So it's not a short-term thing. This has been going on for a year, and because the lack of action from residents is why we're at this stage now. So, and while we did see a 10.5% reduction for June, we saw a 48% increase for March or April, and then another 36% the month after, just because the 2020 baseline is not a good year for a valley with seasonal population because they had all left early. So we're nowhere near that 15% overall for the year.
And then, aside from all of that activity, the state board is putting together recommended tiers and budgets statewide for all water districts. So to your point, any water district that doesn't have them is going to have them. So
I understand, Jeff, but if we did this, we're all legal. We're exactly what we've said we were going to do, and the state has approved. Okay, right?
Well,
I mean,
it's
tell
not
me-
just legal. It's what do we need to do to achieve the goal? Because we can follow the law and fail on the mission, which is to reduce the use by 15%.
We could still do what you're saying and still fail.
Well, we've
I mean,
done it
just like
before, and it worked really well.
Last time we still failed. I mean, we
Well, we had
implemented this and we never got to 36%.
We got to 25, right?
Yeah, we got to 25. We didn't get to 32.
Yeah, so once drought penalties were imposed, the reduction was 27.3% versus the 10% in the 6 months prior. So it did significantly decrease.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think we have a track record that's, it's not easy to change behavior on a large scale.
No.
And I think we saw that worked extremely well last time.
Correct.
All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I just to add some comments here. I don't support the 10% surcharge on the efficient water users in Tier 2. But when you look at the water supply availability coming up in the next years, and if this drought continues on, I think there's a real need to balance our aquifer, and additional conservation will be a requirement of that. We're in this Tier 2 by the state board, and we have the authority to put the penalties on. And as we saw in the 15 to 16, I mean, it was almost immediate on that. Yeah, there were more brown lawns and so forth, but it's a transition and it's a process. I believe that with the reduction of water supply to the valley, potentially through additional drought, is that we absolutely need to take this action. We could do it through the Prop 218 process, but that will take additional time, and we'll lose additional capacity in the aquifer over that time. So, I just think that from a water supply perspective, it's the right time to implement this, also considering the state board's Tier 2 determination.
Yeah. All right, well, and we'll have more opportunity for board comments as we go to the action. But right now, this is, are you done, Jenna?
I can be. We've kind of skipped ahead a bit, back and forth. I did have 2 more slides. We've kind of already talked about them.
No, go ahead and finish. I mean, it's been a good presentation.
I'm like, yeah, I feel like this is like okay spot. But these are just to kind of recap, and we've discussed most of these things. So just some justifications for adopting this recommendation. This would complete all of the reduction actions under stage 2. The consumption patterns, as I mentioned, currently we're down, but we were up very high earlier in the year. So overall, this would help get us towards achieving that 15% across the year. Our rebate program has been very, very successful, exponentially so, especially with increasing to $3 per square foot. And with Rancho Mirage signing on and additional cities, we're only going to see an increase. So we already know we're going to have to come back to request additional funds. So the drought penalties, because they can only go to conservation programs, would help fund those initiatives. As I mentioned, it was proven very effective the last go-around with a 25 to 27% decrease depending on the month. And then also because of the graduated penalty, it just is a more fair way to do it, penalizing the higher water users more than the more efficient water users. And I do know about what some other agencies are doing, but just summary, all of agencies are at least at their stage 2 of their water shortage contingency plan, which include water waste restrictions and enforcement. Some are implementing drought surcharges and penalties. Depending on what their water shortage contingency plan is written at, will dictate what they're actually doing. We have heard of an agency that is capable of installing flow restrictors as part of their shortage contingency plan, and also others are able to suspend water service and probably will, depending on what their customers react. So that is everything.
And we're not planning on doing those.
No, those aren't written in 2 hours. No, but just an idea of what other agencies have in their stage 2.
A lot of people commenting.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's a clear need for this. It's not just conserving water, but it's the messaging on conserving as one of our many strategies for managing our groundwater basin. I mean, conservation, there's definitely opportunities there. We still have opportunities on recycling. It's our mission to have a sustainable aquifer. I know that's not what it says, but that's what it means. And yeah, it is. And so I think this is an important part of that. So this is the time and place for a public hearing to receive testimony on the adoption of volumetric drought penalties. I hereby declare the public hearing open. Does anyone attending this public hearing wish to be heard? If so, please give your name and address and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Do we have anybody?
Mr. President, we only have one attendee online, and it's a staff member.
Okay.
Do they have any comments?
Do they have any comments? Well, I think we've done
better not if they're one of mine.
Pretty good job. We've done a pretty good job of beating this up. And then, have we received any written communications?
No, Mr. President, we have not received any written communications, and I also have not, just for the record, received any blue cards for speakers in the audience. But if there is someone wishing to speak on the item, this would be their opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a gentleman that raised his hand. Yes, on this item?
I'm sorry?
On this particular item on the drought? Oh, come on up.
If you wish to speak, yeah, please come on up to the podium.
I've been sending Costello texts. You'll see them because we're also on.
Morning.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ed Luna. I live in Mecca, and I came here to kind of learn a little bit of what's going on here. And I listened with intent on this particular topic of discussion, and I want to thank you for those presentations that you both have made. And I do agree with some subtle thought that there's pretty heavy-handed measures being considered here. Director Powell mentioned something historic about 5-7 years ago where certain measures were implemented in trying to conserve water. We went through a similar situation. I was living in the East Desert at that time in another area closer to a horse ranch. And while I was while I was doing my part and my neighbors were doing their part, a neighboring area was flooding their fields, and it kind of like conflicted with our idea of water conservation. And I'm sure they had their reason to do that. It was a horse pasture and whatnot, and the horses need green grass and what. But it was kind of like a contrast, and I thought to myself, how evenly will these particular measures be distributed, if you will? Who are the major water users? And how do we get this message across in the way that the Coachella Valley Water District has historically presented itself as a leader in water delivery, water conservation, and water services overall to the general public it serves. And I want to commend you for your historical approach and services. As a former water district employee, I have a little bit of a background in what we have been able to accomplish throughout the years and what I look forward to the future of the Coachella Valley Water District and its customers as well. So I want to thank you for that. But I want you to take it into consideration how you continue providing your service, your consideration for your customers as well, and keep that personal relationship that you have had historically. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, and I think that these are stage 2. There's a lot in there, and you know, implementing drought penalties is a big deal. But you know, when you look at who pays, we have our Tier 1 budget, which is water for inside the home. So we assume you have, for our domestic water customers, we assume you have 4 people living in your home, even if there's only 2 of you, and we allocate 55 gallons per day for each person. So that's not changing. And then on the Tier 2 rate, 90% of that rate's not changing. It's just the top 10%, and that's your outdoor water budget for somebody who's irrigating efficiently for their landscaping. And there's a lot of room in Tier 2. I mean, who knows this well? We still assume that 50% of your landscaping is turf, right?
50 to 60, depending on the time of year.
And 50 to 60%, and that you're irrigating at what, 70% efficiency?
Correct.
Right. So we're assuming there's enough water in that budget that half of your landscaping can be turf, and you're still going to be considered efficient. And the other half would be more desert-friendly landscaping. So 90% of that category is not being touched by this, just the top 10%. And again, that if we adopt the graduated tiers, it's only a 29-cent per unit difference, and a unit's 748 gallons. So it's not a big number. But then when you get up to the higher users that are in tiers 3, 4, and 5, that are not irrigating their landscape efficiently, they pay under this scenario. There you go. So there's a pretty significant penalty for especially tiers 4 and 5. Anyways, just thought I'd say something about that.
Which is interesting for the percent of residential customers up there. 2% in the Tier 5, 7.4% in the excessive, and 20.9% in the inefficient. So that's it. I mean, it looks like Valley residents are doing a pretty good job. That's 70% are in the efficient category. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, for somebody who's over-irrigating their lawn and has the, sprinklers coming on 3 times a day for 10 minutes on each cycle, they're going to pay.
Yeah.
So this is a chance to change that. You don't need to irrigate that much.
Tier 2 will pay too.
Tier 2 would pay 29 cents on 10% of their usage. Yeah.
Well, it'll be 29 cents per CCF.
Yeah.
May I just kind of like finish up what I wanted to say and kind of express why I made
Sure.
my comments? May I please?
Were you an employee at this water district, or
Okay.
Go-
Well,
go-
the,
come
Mr.
on
Luna,
over
if you could
to
come
the
to the
podium
mic,
so
please, so
can-
we can capture you for the record. Thank you. And for the record, Director Estrada has joined us at 9:13 a.m.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I guess the reason I was motivated to say something, I really do talk too much, but I do my best to keep my mouth shut in certain situations. But today I had to say something only because in response to the comment that was made that the surcharges were imposed for the purpose of making up for lost revenues. And I said that's not a justification. I think that we need to continue trying to convince our customers, everybody at every tier level, the importance of water conservation, especially in our lovely desert in the great state of California. It's the language that we use for motivating our charges, and that's very important to me. Why do you do this instead of trying to convey the importance of water conservation, whether you have 20 horses, whether you have one, or you just have a family of two? At all levels, it's important that we all take into consideration that, not to make up for lost revenues.
Yes.
That's all. Thank you very
thank
much.
you. Thank you. And that's an important point, too. I mean, legally, we're not allowed to use these drought penalty revenues for making up lost revenue. That would be something we do through a cost of service and rate-making process. All right. Good. So where are we? No written communications received. Council Ferre, will you please comment on the notice and publication requirements for this public hearing?
Yes, the requirements have been met in that a notice of public hearing was published at least 7 days prior to this hearing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. The requirements were met in that the notice of publication was published at least 7 days prior to the hearing.
Thank you. There being no further input, I hereby declare the public hearing closed. The board will now take up discussion and consideration of adoption of Ordinance 1422.7, an ordinance imposing volumetric drought penalties in accordance with Demand Reduction Action 2.5 of CVWD's Water Shortage Contingency and pursuant to Resolution 2022-28 regarding the adoption of all Level 2 demand reduction actions. And you know, staff presented two scenarios, right? There was the 50% of current tiers where you just add 50% to the rate for those.
Yeah, those were things that we considered when we were assessing how to do the penalties.
Yeah, and then there was the graduated tier, which is is the one that was up on the screen, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those are both options. Are we assuming, as we discuss this, that we're considering the graduated tier one that's on the screen right now?
That's staff's recommendation.
I think that's right?
Yes.
Yeah. The staff recommendation, yes. Okay. Any other discussion by the board on this?
John, I just
Go ahead.
would like to hear from staff. Not sure who actually would address this, but getting the message out is going to be really important in the public information program on these next steps. So have we thought through that plan and how that's going to look?
Oh, that's me.
Oh, thanks, Scott.
Yes, so we can immediately start bill messaging. I mean, our proposal is for this to take effect on September 1st. We also have a mailer with the draft already done that we were planning on sending to every CVWD customer in August. So it would be, you know, and a lot of times our customers who receive electronic billing don't receive the inserts. So this would be something mailed to every home and business.
So for members of HOAs, communities, where the message might get to the management company, is there a way for us to assure that, or to follow up to find out if the individual units are getting?
Well, it would be mailed to every account holder.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, most HOAs, the individual customers pay for their home or a condo, or, you know, so it would get to them.
What time of year was it when you did this last time? Do you remember?
When it was back in July. July of 2015 was the first month.
When you
So
did
roughly
this
the
in
same time of year.
2015?
You know, on the messaging, obviously we can all say that conservation is important, et cetera, which is great. I mean, that's the main message, but that may not get people's attention because they're getting tired of hearing that. If we say we have a lot of money that we can give to them, that might get their attention. And, you know, this could generate quite a bit of additional revenue to that conservation budget that's limited right now. I mean, we don't have enough in there. This will solve that problem. And, you know, if we can, I think utilization of irrigation smart controllers is really low. I don't know what it is, but I suspect it's low because whenever I ask somebody if they have one, they say no. So, you know, if we could push that, that can save a lot of water, and it just solves so many problems for people. And they don't realize that, you know, they're free and we can install them for them. They don't have to really do anything except call us. And I don't know. I would like to see us push that more. You know, the turf rebate gets a lot of attention because of what Rancho Mirage did, and that's fantastic. And I think we're going to see more of that. But the smart controller, whether you have grass or not, it really doesn't matter. It works both ways. I'd like to see us get that utilization up, you know, to 50% or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I'm guessing it's 15% or 10%.
For the large landscape, I have seen some of them as part of the turf application packets that I've been approving.
Yeah, I know. But if we have 100,000 customers or more than that, you know, how many of them? I know we haven't sold that many irrigation smart controls.
We install several hundred a year. We're doing, you know, at least two right now, at least two a week. But I think when season comes back, you know, in October, November, we'll see an uptick in the numbers for that. And we're seeing more and more large landscapes installing them as well.
Yeah, and that's great for large, but also for the homeowner. You know. Okay.
And if I could just say, when we come back for additional turf replacement money, we're also going to look at additional like water monitoring devices, the Rachio that you mentioned a couple meetings ago, flumes, which customers have been very positive about, especially when they are experiencing high consumption. So we are going to have additional suggestions for your suggestions.
No, those are both
for
good
programs. Yeah. So,
thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion to.
You got Costello on the line.
Oh, hey, Costello. I'm sorry. Are you on there?
Yeah, John. Can you hear me?
Yes, they just have to turn up the volume.
Yeah, I think we got you. Go ahead.
Okay, my volume's as high as it goes, so I'll try to speak loud. But, you know, I was able to see a little bit of the presentation, and I do appreciate the comment on the messaging, and it made me think about what I thought we did last time was put out a mock bill, and we kind of use that as the rollout to the penalties, I believe, when we first did this 3 years ago. And I'm wondering if that's something that staff considers. I think that got the message out to folks. It kind of gave them a real sense of a real life scenario on their usage and how their penalties might look if they continue to irrigate in the same way that they're irrigating now. And so wondering if there was any consideration on that. And then I did want to get a little bit more clarification on the different options related to what seemed to me was an attempt to spread. I don't know what we were trying to spread. I don't know if it was the penalty overall, but it was related to the one chart you had up there where it was like 20% on tier 3 or tier 2, and then I think I heard you, John, say that there was one where it was 50-50. Just wanted to get a better sense of what the differences are, or what's the driver.
You know, on the question of the mock bill, I remember we did a mock bill. I think that was for when we redid our rates. Is
think
that
we did go back and look, and I believe we did do a mock bill for
the drought penalty?
For the drought penalties. If we did it, so our thought was that we would. So we did do a mock bill on the last drought penalties, and I believe we did it for a month. If we did that, then I would suggest that we push this off until October, because we would need time to set that up with our bill service, and we could add a message to the bill, but it takes behind-the-scenes programming between our IS folks and the vendor to get that set up. So we would want a little bit more time if we were to do a mock bill.
And this is for the board and the staff. I recall that the mock bill, I thought it had a lot of benefits. It gave folks like almost a way to adjust, and everybody. I thought it was a real good way to make sure that everybody was aware of the situation for the mock bill versus just hoping that they get the message to whatever other means we're thinking about. So I'm a big supporter of the mock bill.
So the mock bill, I mean, we did that because we were extremely concerned about the need to conserve, but also the size of the penalty rate was much higher. In this particular case, we're only talking about a 10% increase, an increase on 10% of the Tier 2 budget, and then a graduated increase for the other tiers, where previously we were doubling the tiered rates, as I recall. So the financial impact to each customer was much greater than we're considering at this point. But if the board does want us to go to a mock bill, it'll delay, getting the actual conservation, I believe.
Yeah. Jim, I think that's a fair point. If the impact was, as big as you're saying is compared to what we're doing now. And then, I'm more comfortable. I don't know what option it is, but I think Director Nelson brought it up, or he pointed out the fact that on the residential side, which we know are, I don't know if that makes up, 90% of our customer base, 95%, but it seems like on the residential side, folks are good water users. They're not at the Tier 5, Tier 4. What's the main difference between option 1, option 2 as it relates to how we're spreading that? I guess what's the main difference on how it impacts residential customers on option 1 and option 2?
So I guess just to simplify it, what we did with the graduated rate was made the penalties increased with the tiers. On the 50%, it was basically a 50% increase for the tiers regardless. So it seems to me that you'd want the higher penalty on the higher tier, and not have the same penalty applied to all the tiers, if that makes any sense.
It does, Jim. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. I agree with you.
And also, I would point out, so this is the sample month is January. So for that same month of January 2022, in the wasteful categories, the landscape accounts, which there are there aren't nearly as many, but 15% were in Tier 5. And they use about half of the water of residential accounts.
In January, 15% of landscape customers were in Tier 5.
Yes.
Budgets are smaller.
But what?
Budgets are smaller in January than July.
Right. So they're not adjusting their clocks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
And this will help drive that.
And they're getting them. One of the other things I'm intrigued by that mock bill also. I think it's a good thing, but I'm hopeful that we get such strong demand in our conservation incentives that we're going to need the money to fund those programs, and so delaying that until October it'll just potentially take a little wind out of those sails to get these conservation projects going for people. you know, there seems to be some excitement and energy with that Rancho Mirage thing. And
Agreed.
so if that can be duplicated a few more times, I'd hate to have to delay and say, well, we ran out of money, we have to wait till December or something. That's not a good look, I don't think.
Money, they'll come back and ask us for more.
Yeah, we can pull it out of the reserve.
Yeah, okay. So are we ready to take action here?
Well, just a few more comments. I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
when I look at, I mean, obviously, the higher users can fund conservation. The penalties obviously encourage a lower water use. So if we don't go with the mock bill, we probably won't catch maybe of the 30% that are not in tier 2. We might not catch at least half of those because they don't even pay attention, they just pay the bill. So a mock bill may not be as effective as we think it's going to be. We need to protect the aquifer because we have a less water supply. For water importation, we're addressing the drier hydrology in both the Colorado River Basin and the Sierras, our state water project. And we're responding to the level 2 drought emergency. So, I think that this program looks to be pretty good. It's fairly well thought out in terms of the penalty rates. I still am a little concerned about the 29 cents on tier 2, but I'll soak it up. And it's graduated, so you are completely under control of your water use. You can decide whether you want to pay the penalties, or you can decide to take action and be a part of the community that has a real challenge coming up in the next couple of years with water supply. So I'm very supportive of it. And I'll make the motion to approve item 8.
Bravo.
B.
Per staff recommendation.
Per staff recommendation.
Right, and if I may, it's ordinance 1422.7 with the insertion of figures as recommended by staff.
I would make that motion.
And I agree with everything that you're saying, everything that you're saying. I just believe there's another way to do it. And so we agree to disagree, and that's why I'll be voting no on this. And I think that you guys should at least be putting in the mock. I mean, how much money does it cost a district to tell people this is what your bill is going to be if you keep up the same habits? So, I mean, I think you guys should at least put that in there. I mean, so it delays it a month, but at least it doesn't. I mean, not everybody watches the news or reads the newspaper. You know, a lot of people are going to be caught off guard on this. A lot of people are, especially in the summer. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, is there a second?
So I'll make the second to the motion to include the clarifications provided by the board attorney.
Yeah, that's good, I think. All right, and we're going to do a roll call vote, but is there any other discussion before we vote? Hearing none. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Okay. President Powell?
I have a.
Oh, go ahead.
You know, I want to make another push for the mock bill. I do think that there's folks that are probably going to be cut off guard, but I think I somewhat heard Director Nelson's comment, where I think he kind of made the point that it would probably miss some folks, and I bring it up because I'm trying to understand. I didn't catch it all, but I think he was making a good point about why maybe it wasn't as needed, and I think it was. Does staff feel that they're comfortable with that they could achieve maybe reaching out to what you might call the biggest wasters, but maybe it's not as significant as a number, that staff would be able to kind of target those folks and would still maybe make as much progress as the mock bill, if you did the mock bill?
Sure.
Is that kind of the argument?
Yeah, sure. So we've already done several presentations to large HOAs, property management companies that manage 40 to 50 different HOAs here in the Valley. And we'll also be looking at the consumption report every month to see who's at the tier 5 and 4 and start doing some really targeted outreach to them to help them reduce that usage.
But didn't we also
And then
hire? Sorry, Director
one last
Scott.
question for staff. When Jim, when we think about the volume of water that is being, the volume of water in tier 2, the volume of water in 3, 4, 5, how does that look like in terms of like the volume of water that we're considered wasteful? Would we say that tier 5 makes up 50% of the volume, or do we have a sense of that?
I do not have a sense of that, and while Jenna or Scott try and remember what they may have forgotten, I do think that the interest that staff has invested, or the work that staff's invested in trying to get the Tier 5 folks to come down, or at least pay attention to their water use. We did hire a contractor. I think it was it Blue Dog or
Blue Watchdog, correct?
Blue Watchdog, to go out and work with those folks individually, but the success rate has been, I don't know, deplorable is probably the right word. At one point, we had over 200 accounts that were habitually in Tier 5, and we saw really no real reduction in the use of those properties. A lot of those folks, or some of those folks, this is not their primary residence. They come in for maybe a couple of weeks a year. The property is maintained by someone else who pays the bill and doesn't really pay much attention as long as there's no brown spots in the lawn for the couple of months that the guy actually comes to visit or the landowner comes to visit. It becomes very frustrating for us because there is a great opportunity for folks that have resources to put those resources to a better use in conserving, the water that we do have. That is limited, and we just have not been able to catch their attention. But I don't know from a broader sense, I would have to guess that when we say 80% of our customers are within their Tier 2 budget, that most of the water we use is within that Tier 2. But I did hear Scott say that 15% of the irrigation accounts use 50% of the water that's used by all of our residential customers. So, it might be helpful to have someone take a look at, where the water consumption for each of the tiers is, and then report that back to the board when it's available.
We can do that.
Right. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second to approve this item. I'm assuming we're not doing any substitute motions or anything like that? No. So appreciate all the board comments. I know we're not of one mind here, but I feel a sense of urgency. I think that messaging. We've been asked to do this a year ago, so we're not doing it lightning fast. But I think acting now rather than later is a wise move, in my view. Let's vote and see how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah, roll call.
And we do have a motion by Director Nelson and a second by Director Aguilar. President Powell?
Aye.
Vice President Estrada?
Aye.
Director Bianco?
No.
Director Aguilar?
Aye.
And Director Nelson?
Aye.
Okay.
So that
4-1.
passed 4-1. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. I think the hard work is ahead of us because it's messaging and it's getting these conservation dollars put to work.
Spent.
Yeah, put them to work. Get people. And someday tell me what our utilization is on smart controllers. I want to know. Is it 15%? How many what percentage of our customer base is actually?
How would we I'm just curious.
We know how many we've installed, right?
Right.
And we know how many customers we have.
We don't know if they've installed them privately.
Themselves, yeah. Or had them replaced because they didn't like them.
I don't know. The new ones are amazing. That ratio is really slick because it's all on your phone. Okay, on we move here.
Thank you.
I gotta go look at my thing. I don't remember. Do we have any
Informational
communications?
items. We have
Were
them.
there? There we go. Let me get my system going here. Board general comments. Why don't we start with Vice President Estrada?
Did we lose him?
Maybe he left.
Oh, he may have checked out after the
He did. It
item.
looks like he left the meeting.
All right, so he was here for the item, and he's no longer at the meeting. That's good. Appreciate that he was here. Director Nelson.
Comments. Yeah, so the discussions about addressing the Colorado River are still ongoing. A lot of those discussions revolve around lower basin curtailment of use or contributions. Robert, Jim, myself, Steve Abbott are continued to be involved in that process, as well as looking to see what to do with the commissioner's call to save 2.2 to 4 million acre feet of water use across the river. So I think that the action item that we just took is a significant action in terms of showing the Southwest that the Coachella Valley is serious about water use in the area. It appears that this time that under consideration might be I should say the hydraulic conditions appear to show that we may be in a tier 2 drought contingency plan level, which would require us to contribute to at minimum, the amount of water under the drought contingency plan. So that's kind of at a minimum, and there are additional actions that are being considered to reach the commissioner's demand to save that 2.2 to 4 million acre feet of water, which is a significant amount. There's been much discussion of that in the press, and I think that our actions today do a good thing for that process. So I appreciate that, the board's approval of that. And we'll just keep working on trying to come up with some provisions and meeting the reclamation's requirements by the mid-August when the 24-month study is released by the Bureau in mid-August. So look forward to that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Director Aguilar.
The only comment I have is this might be a good time for us to relook at commencing maybe another round of our 2x2 meetings with some of the cities where we could actually target the turf rebate program as part of the agenda for those discussions. So I'd be open to encouraging that.
Yeah. Like that a lot.
That's it. Thank you.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. Director Bianco.
No comments.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to comment on a meeting I had that I'm not seeking per diem on. I'm not sure why. I'm worried what's going to come of it. I had a 90-minute conversation with a reporter from Bloomberg on the drought, and I can't remember her name. I have it in my email somewhere, but it was interesting. You know, just so hard. Water's complicated, and she had already made a bunch of visits to people in Northern California, and then I'm trying to talk to her about the Colorado River system, and it was really hard to understand that it's two different things. because it's drought here and it's drought there, and there's agriculture here and agriculture there, and there's domestic and it's two different things, and we're kind of at the nexus of that because we have State Water Project and Colorado River Water, right? So I guess we're well located, right? And we have good rights, and the aquifer. I mean, it's such a unique. What we have in the Coachella Valley is so unique, and trying to explain that to somebody who doesn't understand it, who hasn't never experienced it, I don't know. It was, like I said, 90 minutes of trying to explain how things are. Anyways, I wanted to say that, just mention that I had that conversation. Hopefully that it comes out and makes sense. I mean, I was really advocating for federal participation in funding conservation and particularly agricultural demand reduction, and a lot of that's fallowing. And it's going to be in Imperial Valley, in Yuma, and maybe some here. But those are my comments. Any future agenda items that requested by the board? So, meeting reports. Director Estrada's off the line. Let's see. The second one listed is July 18th, Desert Valleys Builders Association meeting. We had a directors meeting. Kind of, they're really finding their role now. That they're members of the NAHB, National Association of Home Builders. I think it's been a really good move for them, and they're, I don't know, they're feeling like they're more established here, which is good. The third item listed, July 20th, Director Estrada's not here. I tried to dial into the Disadvantaged Communities meeting, and it took me 20 minutes to realize I couldn't.
We had a problem with the.
So I
It
don't.
wasn't my fault.
That,
Like it wasn't my fault.
I don't know what happened there, but it didn't work. So I was not able to participate in that meeting.
Yeah, we have to work that.
Yeah.
I believe it was an issue with the Skype system, and IT worked on that this past week, and it has been addressed because I've tested my Skype line, and it's working now. So that line should be as well.
Yeah, it was weird. You'd call in, and it would just sort of ring and whatever.
And then it would go silent.
We even called in from the room, and it would ring and ring, and we couldn't even pick it up ourselves.
Anyways, so I'll add one more meeting that I was able to attend was on July 22nd. We had a principals meeting with Desert Water Agency, and Director Estrada was there, and their chair and vice chair were there to discuss the Agua Caliente mediation. Any other meetings?
Yeah, John, I just have one. On July 13th, there was a California caucus of the Colorado River Board staff people to discuss ongoing discussions with the Bureau of Reclamation. That was it.
Anybody else? All right. Is there a motion to approve per diem for the meetings reported on?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passed 4-0. General Manager report.
Yes, sir. Just for those that didn't know, Director Estrada, Vice President Estrada, was not able to make it today because he found out he'd been nominated for the 40 Under 40. I think that's by Palm Springs Magazine. Katie Evans had been previously nominated, so it's quite a significant consideration and respect for what he's been able to do here while he's been on the board, but maybe also some of the things he's done for the city of Coachella. Hard to say exactly how to parse that out. The other thing I usually report on is the COVID stats. We've currently got 2 qualifying cases and 6 people off work. We've had 18 qualifying cases for the month of July, so we're experiencing the same type of increase in COVID cases that the community in general and the state seem to be experiencing. We've had 318 recovered, and unfortunately still the 2 mortalities that we had early on from complicating factors. And that's all I've got, sir.
Thank you. Does seem to be spreading lately, COVID.
Yes.
Spreading a little quicker. Council comments.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Just wanted to mention AB 2449, which has not been passed yet or signed, but it would be the follow-up to AB 361. As you know, AB 361 allows for virtual attendance of board members as long as there's a state of emergency as well as a recommendation or imposition of social distancing. And you just readopted that today as part of the consent calendar. AB 361 remains in place until the 1st of January 2024, and or if those two criteria are still in effect. AB 2449 would go into effect 2024 through 2026, but it would really limit the amount of virtual meeting attendance that board members could do without going back to what the old rules were. We can always do the old rules of posting the agenda, where the person's going to be, having it open to the public, all of that. But having a virtual setup without those requirements under AB 2449 would be limited to a situation where a board member has just cause or an emergency, and that could only be utilized for the just cause part twice a year by that particular director. And just cause would be a child care or caregiving need, a contagious illness, a need related to physical or mental disability, or travel while on the official business of the agency. So it would be limited in terms of virtual meetings. That wouldn't have any impact on what this district's been doing for years in terms of live streaming and access for the public, but in terms of board member attendance, that would be AB 2449 if it is adopted. So we'll keep you up to date on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any department reports?
As a matter of fact, sir, we do.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Hi, Scott. Come on up.
Okay, just a quick update. We haven't talked about industrial hemp for a long time, but the California Office of Administrative Law has adopted emergency regulations from the California Department of Food and Agriculture, adopting the industrial hemp state regulatory plan. It complies with the USDA requirements. So we're advised that CVWD can now accept applications for industrial hemp. And growers are required to register with the County Agricultural Commissioner's Office and get their applications updated on an annual basis. So after this meeting, we're going to open the application. It's already online, and when customers submit an application and they click the box for industrial hemp, they'll be required to submit their application with the county or their permit with the county. And we'll track those permits and get them updated annually so that we can continue to make sure that we're in compliance with the USDA requirements, regulations. And I'm available to answer any questions.
I have one question.
Yes.
Real fast on that. Can you use canal water for industrial hemp?
Yes.
You can?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the canal application. Sorry, I should have clarified. It's the canal application that we're going to be changing immediately after this meeting.
Have you had requests for this?
We've been getting requests over the last couple of years.
Right, but recently?
I haven't heard anything recently.
Okay. Be interesting to see how many requests you get.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll be tracking it. So if you ever need an update or want an update, we can provide that.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay.
At this time, the board will recess to closed session to consider the items 13A and B as listed on the agenda. We will reconvene and report out of closed session following that.
Good job, Albert and Cynthia.
regular meeting is hereby reconvened. We do not have any reportable action from the closed session, and with hearing no objection, we are adjourned.